Hi there, my name is Shagufta and welcome to Seriously Planning, the BookTube equivalent of my blog seriouslyplanning.com. This is my very first BookTube review. Normally I do them either on my blog seriouslyplanning.com or on my SoundCloud page, SoundCloud /ShaguftaP, but we've migrated to the YouTube world and this is my first BookTube video. And the book I want to talk about today is called Not Working by Lisa Owens. It's a book that was published in May 2016 and it's a book I was really excited about reading because I'd read some of the sample bits from Pan Macmillan online and they just seemed really, really funny. And the book is about a girl named Claire. I'm not exactly sure how old. She's either in her late 20s, early 30s, and when the book begins, she's just quit her job of 6 years in creative communications. Even she's not quite sure what that is. And she's quit her job to discover what it is she actually wants to do with her life. She lives with her boyfriend, Luke, and Luke is training to be a brain surgeon, so he's very accomplished, has everything all figured out, and that's one of the tensions in the book is her trying to figure things out versus him being on a very established career path and really saving the world, it seems, every day. And so when I came to this book, I thought this would be a book about that period of trying to figure out what it is you want to do. Sometimes that period seems to last your whole life, all throughout your 20s and into your 30s, and how to navigate that period. And if you actively take time to figure out what it is you want to do, what does that look like? What are the challenges of that? What are the humors of that? And how do you make that a productive time? And I was excited about the book. And then I got a copy, an electronic copy, so I don't have a physical copy of the book to show you, and thought the bits I've heard are so exciting, this book is going to be fantastic. And it was a good book, but it wasn't as good as I thought it would be. So I would say, I don't like doing books by stars, but it's, I think, a 3 out of 5 book for me. It's a 3 out of 5 because, so here I'm going to sort of say the good things that I thought were really wonderful about this book and the not so good bits. And if you've read this book, I'd really love to hear other people's thoughts about it because I'm still kind of thinking through my own thoughts about the book. The good thing about this book is there are really funny parts of this book. So she's in a long-term relationship, has been in a long-term relationship for the past 7 years. They're not married. Her friends are getting married and having babies. And people are confused about this period of her life that she's embarked on where she's not working. She's figuring things out, but how long does that period actually last? What is she doing with her time? And all those situations are ramped for comic moments. And this book, when I was reading it and laughing out loud quite a bit. And there's paragraphs that I found myself bookmarking to come back to and laugh about again because she captures a lot of the humor of being in a relationship, the humor of trying to figure out what it is you want to do, and just, I guess, trying to be a grown-up in your 20s and 30s and feeling like you're failing at it. I think she captures some of that really well, and it's very funny. It's a very, very funny book. The not so good parts of it is, at first I was a little bit uncertain about the structure of this book. So this book, it's not divided into chapters. It's sort of divided into heading, so it'll be like tube, and then there'll be a description of her experience on the tube. And then the next heading will be gym, and it's her at the gym. And then there might be an observation about, expired groceries in the fridge or something like that. And then there'll be what seems like a couple of pages where she's talking to her boyfriend. And then it's mother, and so it's what I'm saying is it's very disjointed. And I read about a third of this book at the gym, and it was perfect for that because you could sit, stand, or run or whatever on the treadmill. And it's designed in such a light reading way that you can actually be doing another activity in reading this book. But when I first started reading this book, I actually was at the gym when I started, and I was really confused about the structure, and it took me a little bit of time to get into it. And then after a while, I sort of forgot about it, or became more used to it, I guess. But it was still hard reading at times, or it felt a bit disjointed. I couldn't tell, is this really brilliant storytelling, or did I feel this was really disjointed? And I think it felt more disjointed at times than brilliant storytelling. But I think the jury for me is still out on that one. The other thing is I felt like it was overly tidy storytelling. And that she didn't actually get to the heart of the matter of how do you decide what it is you want to do. Claire's trying to figure out what it is she wants to do with her life. And she has conversations with friends about it. She's sort of trying to apply for jobs. She spends a lot of time online. She spends time in her pajamas. And part of that is what happens when you just have a lot of time on your hands, I guess. But I was really curious to see her try different things and try to get to a closer approximation of what it is she wants to do. She gets to the point where she says there won't be one particular thing, but there may be many different things, and maybe I can just try those different things. But I got to a point where there were like 20 pages left in the book, and I thought, how is this going to resolve? She's nowhere closer to figuring out what she wants to do, nowhere closer really to thinking through these questions. And as a reader who's going on this journey with this character and wanting to get something from the read, aside from a chuckle or two, I felt a little bit cheated from the process. And the conclusion of the book, no spoilers, I don't want to spoil for anyone who wants to read this book. She finds out something about her partner, her boyfriend Luke, and then decides to make certain decisions of her own. And when she makes those decisions, it's like the last few pages of the book. And I felt like this book was a lot about comic observations of London or being in your 20s, but wasn't about the question of working or not working and what that thing could be. What could that next job be? And I felt cheated. I felt a little bit cheated. And it also felt like overly tidy storytelling. Like it's time, I don't know, like maybe the deadline was due. It was time for the story to wrap up, and suddenly Claire is just okay with everything. It didn't feel believable. And the very end of the book is the epilogue where she's going out for a run pre-work, and throughout the book she keeps putting on her exercise clothes and like just doesn't go for a run. And I think a lot of times, even when we tell stories, it goes to other people about our lives. We go from, I was really confused about a thing, to I have it all figured out. And the messy in-between part is what I'm really interested in. And I wanted the author to flesh that out a little bit more. She also has a conflict with her mother that is not resolved for so much of the book. And it's because she said some things about her grandfather that her mother doesn't believe. And then suddenly at the end of the book, like, her mother either does believe her or has decided to let it go, and they're all friendly once again. And it didn't feel like a very natural transition. It didn't feel like the characters were learning and growing together. It was like they were in conflict, they were trying, and then suddenly it was resolved. But the resolution moments in both cases, both the job and resolving with parents, was done poorly, I thought. And then also, a huge part of the book is this character Luke, who is her boyfriend, and is supportive, not supportive at times. They fight, they don't fight, but he really feels like a 2D character. And some parts of the relationship feel really real. Like he comes home from work and they decide what DVD they're going to watch, what they want to cook for dinner, what they go through the process of figuring out groceries at the grocery store, all the sort of mundane day-to-day things that happen with your partner. But he himself and their connection also just felt really 2D. I couldn't figure out why they were together. What are the qualities of Luke? What are the qualities of Luke and Claire together? Why are they together? It was easy to see them in those mundane moments, but beyond that, I couldn't really see them. It's hard to describe, but it felt like a very wooden, like two-dimensional relationship. So finally, what struck me about this book, and isn't necessarily a critique of this book, more of my reading in general, is this book is about a universal experience of trying to figure out what it is you want to do, trying to figure out how you can make your 20s and 30s a time of meaningful work, of interesting experiences. And that experiences is relatable regardless of your race, regardless of your religion, regardless of where you come from. I think a lot of people connect to that experience. But because of the storyteller that we have, who is from the UK, who is around, I assume she's white, there's so much of this that isn't relatable if you're coming from a different experience. So Claire drinks a lot in this book, and she ends up in a lot of situations because she drinks far too much wine. She doesn't know her limits, and or she says too much to a friend, and there's so much to her experience that I think is relatable to a lot of people. But if you're not in that, if that's not your experience, reading this book can feel very alienating. And I've been finding this, I think, a lot with books I've been reading in general right now, where I'm so craving books about diverse characters, about diverse places, about diverse points of view, but also books that aren't about oppression, that aren't about war-torn societies, that are just about everyday stories, but just of more diverse characters. Amazon explained this to me the other day when I was looking at books that I particularly like, and said that the category that most appeals to my reading tastes is literary fiction domestic affairs, which is very niche and I did not know was a thing. But I think I get into this dilemma where I really want books that are interesting about experiences that are everyday, but end up with characters that don't relate to me at all. And we've been talking about this on Seriously Planning, if you're familiar with the blog, and certainly on the podcast episodes. And part of what I want to do with this new YouTube channel, I'm broadcasting from Johannesburg. I recently moved here about more than a year ago from Canada, is find those books that do fill that void for me. Or maybe say that those books don't exist, and then try and find books about experiences that speak to me but point out what they're missing. So this was our first review about Not Working by Lisa Owens. A very, very funny book. Captures a lot of really comic moments really well, but the writing, I think, is a little bit dull at times. It's overly tidy storytelling. It's not a book that fills your soul necessarily, and ultimately there's more than I was looking for here. Till next time, at our next review, which might be our next video might be an intro video, it might be a book haul video, it might be another review, who knows, but I'm excited to get this channel started. Take care.